I don't get the Bible.
And I'm Shawn.
I'm Delaney.
Dad and daughter.
This is the Yeshuan podcast where I read the Bible and ask you questions from the Yeshuan perspective.
Yes.
Go to Yeshuans.faith if you don't know who we are.
And get the app. It's well worth it.
Get the app.
Things are coming out. Hey,
Okay.
we're in Hebrews, and the first thing was about how God in different times and in the past talked to people by the prophets, and how in these last days spoke to us by his Son, which shows that those were the last days when he said it, and that there's no more need for prophets, as the writer of Hebrews maintains. Shall we continue?
Yes. Hebrews.
Speaking of Jesus, he says,
Hebrews 1:5.
all right.
For to which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son, today I have become your father"? Or again, "I will be his father and he will be my son"? And again, when God brings his firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." And speaking of the angels, he says he makes his angels spirits and his servants flames of fire. But about the Son, he says, "Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be the scepter of your kingdom."
That is
Yeah.
really important stuff. The writer is comparing angels and their makeup to the makeup of the Son and the power of the Son.
There's more.
Yeah.
That's the rest of the chapter, actually, is these comparisons.
Yeah.
Should I read them all?
Yeah.
I'll read them all. The scepter of your kingdom, you have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has sent you above your companions by anointing you with the oil of joy. He also says, "In the beginning, Lord, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will." I think we should stop at the previous one,
All right.
because this part is that's prefaced again what you said. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs.
If you read that
Why
closely,
is that important to call? Like, what are angels? What were angels? The conception of angels before Jesus came, that people had, that now they're calling out Jesus as more than an angel.
the Jews had concepts of there being angels like in ranks of an army, and that they were created by God to work in the heavenly realm, and that some of them are around his throne, and some of them, all they do is say his name over and over and over again. And they all have different capacities and powers. There's some really powerful ones like Michael the Archangel and Gabriel. These are angels of the Old Testament that the Jews believed in. And
like had stories of, or they
yeah,
were just...
their non-canonized writings talk a lot about angels, the Book of Enoch and all these others. And so they're essentially just see angels like you would see humans relative to fish. Angels are of an economy that are completely different than us. Yeah.
But they're heavenly, but they're not connected to God.
Right. They're heavenly. They're in the service of God. They appear to have free will because we read about them falling.
That's so weird. Satan.
Yeah. And then we also read about them being in rebellion to God. And people always say, I don't know how people die and reject God. How did angels who were made by him and didn't have bodies and all the stuff we have rebel against him?
Yeah.
In his presence.
I've never thought about this, but when did Satan fall as an angel? It must have been before the garden.
No, that's the natural assumption.
Well, if there was a Ha-Satan,
Yeah.
or was it Ha-Satan in the garden with them? That was that
there
the
was,
phrase?
and I tend to believe that was a title or not a being.
It calls, right, like, because, yeah, we can talk about that, but the serpent has that title.
Yeah.
A serpent has a title.
Yeah. And that serpent has all the capacities of an orangutan instead of a snake. And
Gotta say it.
and the cursing that was on that servant fit an orangutan that walks on his knuckles and eats from the roots and has an intelligence and lips and a mouth that can speak rather than a snake. I have to.
No, you have to explain it fully.
Okay, so we all believe that Satan, this angel that fell and was kicked out of heaven, was cast down and in the Garden of Eden, tempting Adam and Eve to disobey God.
Yeah.
Okay. And because they call him the serpent, which is Nakash in Hebrew, people say it was a snake. And so they say Eve was tempted by the snake.
Yeah.
Right. And so the curse that God put upon the serpent was from now on, you're going to walk on your belly. So the implication then is, did snakes walk on their tails? Right?
Yeah.
And then you will also eat from the dust of the earth. And like silverback gorillas, I'm pretty sure the other simian species are all vegetarians. They don't eat meat. So they eat grubs and they eat the roots. And
do snakes eat meat?
They will eat meat.
Like animals. Yeah.
And then also the snake was speaking to Eve, talking with her. So how do snakes do that?
Yeah.
And and I'm not the one who created this. This is from a really renowned Bible commentator named Adam Clark. So I'm just repeating what makes the most sense. And it was a monkey. And I think that in the development of the world, like you and I have talked about, outside of the garden, when he said, okay, I'm going to build a garden now and bring real man into it, there were monkeys and cavemen. And one of them snuck in and started to try to tempt it.
Yeah. I'm convinced of that.
I am too.
What is there, this is off topic and sorry, but what is there against the idea that the garden and Adam and Eve were like the first humans that came from like they're just the first human. Sorry, no. Wait. What is there against the idea that they're the first humans that have God with them? Like there was cavemen and stuff before that, but the garden is the start of God with people. Because
that's where Moses started to describe the beginning of the human race, and the Bible is a human race book. And so because he started with there being darkness that was full of chaos.
I know, but that's like very literal to say that was a 6-day period or whatever.
Well, you're talking about literal Christians who are insane.
I know. I'm saying between us, from your perspective, what is there against
nothing
that?
That's
possible, right?
Oh, yeah. There's nothing against that concept.
Okay.
At all.
Like biblically.
Yeah. No, the only thing is death. Okay. Because what Christians say is Adam and Eve introduced death into this world.
Right.
So if there were
spiritual
cavemen, right. But
spiritual death,
but they would say physical death too.
Do you think Adam and Eve would have physically lived forever if they didn't fall?
For one reason.
Why?
They had access to the tree of life. And by eating that fruit, it kept them alive while they were eating vegetables and things, and things were dying in the garden.
You make the argument that tree of life, their death when they died on that day,
was spiritual.
They didn't actually physically die, so it was a spiritual death. So why wasn't the life that they were getting from that tree spiritual life?
It was physical because it was a physical fruit that they were able to eat to sustain themselves.
It feels like a contradictory argument.
Explain.
You're saying they didn't eat that fruit, so their death was spiritual.
No.
Or they did eat that fruit, so their death was spiritual.
Right, because the eating of the fruit they disobeyed God spiritually.
Yes.
Yeah, by eating the fruit that was forbidden them.
But you're saying that they would have been obeying God physically if they didn't do that, because it would give them eternal physical life. Because
they would have remained in the garden. They would have remained in the garden if they hadn't have disobeyed God. That means they would have remained in his presence where he was alive in them. But he said, the day you eat this fruit, you will die. He didn't die till he was 930.
I know. The spiritual death argument makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to me that you maintain they would have physical eternal life before that.
Because they had access
spiritually
to
died.
the tree. They didn't have access after they ate.
The tree was giving them spiritual life.
No, the tree was giving them physical life.
No, that's what I'm asking. Why do you go to that? Why do you make that assumption when the other tree brought spiritual death and the first tree brought physical life? They're like separate arguments.
No, the other tree didn't bring spiritual death. Disobedience brought spiritual death. They're saying we're not going to listen to you.
It's still the same argument. I'm sorry, but it's still the same argument.
I don't get it.
You're saying obedience would give them physical eternal life, and disobedience would give them spiritual death.
That's right.
They're just contradictory to me. Like it's either obedience gives spiritual life, spiritual death, or obedience gives physical life, physical death.
I want to restate this, and you tell me if you get it. All right?
I get what your argument is.
No, wait, I want to make it more clear. Forget the trees. Just say that the tree of life is a vitamin.
Okay.
And if they ate it every day, their flesh would not decay the way material things decay. That's all it was. Okay? There was a tree that represented rebellion and non-faith and turning from God. Eating of that, it was not the fruit that killed them, that caused them to die. It was they're not listening to God who said, don't eat of it. So by eating of it, that act of eating of it was merely a spiritual indication of a spiritual rebellion.
No, I don't get it.
I don't get you now. Now tell me. You got to reword it.
There was one rule for them. That rule was not only eat of this tree. It was don't eat of that one. So he never said eat, or did he? Did he ever say you must only eat of this one?
No.
He only said you can't eat of that one. So they're eating from this other one.
Right.
So the only constraint going on was disobedience to that one rule.
Yeah.
And all we know is that when they disobeyed that one rule, they didn't die physically.
Right. They died spiritually, though.
Yeah.
Because they were
so
removed.
The only thing going on in the garden between God and Adam and Eve is that they would die spiritually.
Right.
Not that they would live forever. Like
if they had remained in the garden, they would have lived forever because they would have had access to the vitamin that kept their bodies alive.
That is presumptuous, I think, because the one rule is proven to be about spiritual death.
Right.
So the rest of it is about their spiritual life.
No. Because
it makes a leap, though. There's like
it
nothing
does.
that
There's
says
a leap in
physical about that.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, every tree of the garden was good for food. And all the trees were pleasant to the eyes and delicious to the taste. The tree of knowledge was the same. Had those two things too. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the tree of knowledge brought pride, the promise of pride. And you'll be wise, right? So by eating that, they said spiritually in their heart, we want to be like you. And we want the power to have it without being God. We want the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You'll be as the gods. So by eating of that, by eating of it, they actually did what the angels did. They said, we're going to try to be God.
I know. Okay. Maybe the better question is that, okay, there's one rule and they break it.
There were three, but keep going.
What are the three?
Multiply, replenish the earth. Take care of this garden, have dominion, and subject everything to you.
Okay.
And don't eat of that tree.
Okay. In terms of death, there was only one rule. Or in terms of
death writ large.
Death being inflicted was the consequence of one of the rules.
Right. You will surely die
of that tree.
in that day.
They ate of it.
Yeah.
They died. They didn't die.
They did die.
They didn't die that moment.
They did die that moment.
They didn't physically die that moment.
Okay, that's true.
So that proves that the one rule is about their spiritual death. Nothing says
true.
So they didn't physically die. So like they did die. That they did die. I agree with that.
Right.
Spiritually. So one tree is about if they eat that vitamin, they're going to live physically forever. The other one is they'll die spiritually if they eat of that. And so they did die spiritually, but they kept eating of that other one. They should have lived forever.
They didn't keep eating of the other one. They were
they
removed
moved from the...
They were kicked out of the presence of the other one.
That makes it make sense.
I've said that. This is a dad talking to a pregnant daughter.
No, it's not.
This is getting worse and worse as we go on.
The logic is there. If they weren't, the only thing that makes that make sense is that they weren't allowed to eat of the other tree anymore.
Right. And the thing about it
they weren't allowed to have the vitamin.
Is that if there was a tree called the tree of life, they were eating of it. And it wasn't a one-time thing. It was a constant diet of it, apparently, because they were free to eat it. The fact that they died later physically shows that the access to the tree of life was the connection between physical immortality for them. By being removed out of the garden, they didn't have access to that.
But we don't know that for sure.
We don't know it for sure.
That's
it is a
not
conjecture.
for sure.
You're right on that.
Yeah.
But
it could be that the tree of life was like spiritual and a metaphorical thing that they should be eating of that as like a representation of their faith.
You are absolutely free to include that in your assessment because I can't prove that right or wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the
This is how it goes with us.
Back to the original thing though, which is the only thing precluding them from being just the first spiritual humans, not like people ever, or the transition from caveman to human is basically what Adam and Eve were.
Yeah.
The only thing you're saying is death. That's why you brought that up. That's the only thing that is involved in making that not a correct view of it. And I don't know why you say that.
Well, because people would say there was no death in our realm until they ate of the fruit. Therefore, the cavemen and the monkeys and the aliens outside and the rest of the world, the dinosaurs, they weren't dying. And so
were they not? They were dying.
That's the assumption because Adam and Eve brought death to the world, which is a passage. So they used
spiritual death.
Well, let me explain that a little bit.
Because death must have been in the world if you're outside of the garden and they die.
That's why I think the garden was a particular dispensation of God working with the totally good model of humans. Mm-hmm. Now ready to go. I'm going to breathe into these guys. I'm going to make them alive through my breath. I didn't do that with the apes and things. So that was the little model place.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
I don't know. I just see the whole thing as spiritual. It doesn't really align with, I feel like it does though. I don't know it, obviously. I need to really study it more, but it seems consistent with the whole thing that part is spiritual and that he was always trying to work with people spiritually.
I think you're probably right there.
Like the garden was a place where him breathing life, I don't know about the making of the clay, so that makes it more physical. Like he made them with clay.
From the very red clay.
Yeah. And maybe he did. Maybe he made the first humans and there were other creatures or whatever. Like
sure. That's what I think.
Okay.
There are prototypes out there.
But it could still be that the garden was a physical place for them to abide spiritually with God.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. They didn't choose to do that. So they're kicked out of it, and everything becomes material because they do that. It's physical death. There's physical law. There's whatever happens from then, like Moses
until the new Adam
Jesus
brings back and makes everything spiritual again.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
It just...
Yeah, that's why there were prophets and laws and everything else, because it was all material.
Yeah,
temples.
they made it material by eating that tree.
Let's wrap this one up let me just go into this, okay?
Okay.
If you look at the deconstruction of the first man and woman, it started with a spiritual decision to rebel against God. They did, and he said, in the day you do it, you will die. But we know he lived till 9:30.
Right.
So we say that was the spiritual death. What died? The spirit in him. And then over time, we see that through Adam and then through the human race, we also became more corrupt in our mind, will, and emotion to God. Because we became our own gods. So our soul, mind, will, and emotion started to die too. And we became soulishly dead to him. Adam and Eve probably came out and still had mind, will, and emotion toward him because he talked to him.
Yeah.
Right? And then ultimately, the ultimate death was physical.
Yeah.
So we have spiritual death, we have soul death, we have physical death. That was the result of the rebellion.
Complete death across civilization.
And that was passed on as they procreated. Okay, that's why Jesus gave the message he did to Nicodemus. But the interesting thing to me is that when you believe with heartfelt belief, you're spiritually made alive right then. Just like Adam immediately died.
Oh, wow.
And then over the course of your life, your soul gets more and more mind, will, and emotion alive.
Wow.
Ultimately, your body will be made alive spiritually in the kingdom. So it's the reverse order. That's really another reason I teach it that way.
That's really interesting. And it does bring a whole different layer to it to say Jesus... If Jesus didn't physically resurrect, it would make this spiritual argument stronger, but he physically resurrected.
Right.
So, like, physical death at the start probably must have been, like, a factor.
Yeah.
But
and that's a really good point. The only problem with that point is that as the intermediary between the two economies, he had to experience the physical life, physical death, in order to make everything spiritual for humans that are so
but like if it started spiritual and the physical death of Adam and Eve was gonna happen, then him overcoming it doesn't really bring you back to the garden state. So
awesome.
That's really interesting, this soul.
It is, and that's not scriptural. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Well, that's how the Trinity came up to, or not, you know, like there's ways to understand that is not the same. Sorry. But
all right.
Okay. Well, thanks for bearing with us in that episode. If you listened, my mom's in the audience laughing. That doesn't help the...
I tried to tell him.
Self-confidence.
Vodka's not good for pregnant women.
Oh my gosh.
No one listens.
I thought that was a valid discussion.
It was
still
really
think
valid. I love it. Super valid.
All right.
Not invalid.
We'll talk to you next time. Bye.